C-Tag Studios proudly presents the Almost Daily ZenCast with your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Today's episode, debunking the debate around flat Earth versus round Earth. All right, let's get started. Oh, by the way, I think I've been failing to mention on the last few episodes. The title music I've been using is called Skipping in the No Standing Zone. Sorry, I screwed up the title. Skipping in the No Standing Zone by Peter Gresser. And I got it from FMA.org, or the freemusicarchive.org, and you can use it too. FMA.org is an awesome resource for royalty-free music created by artists that want you to share their music in your projects. So go check them out. That's a totally unsolicited endorsement. FMA.org is awesome. There's all kinds of weird, wacky music there. Some of it is better than some of the rest. Some of it is not as great. But it's a great resource, and I applaud them and the work they are doing. And a special thanks to Peter Gresser for that neat little tune. It's just right. It was just what I was looking for. Okay. Hello. And namaste, my friends. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are thriving. And if you're not, by the way, I'm someone that is willing to make time to be available to you on the internet as someone to talk to vent at, to listen to. It's one of the things that I do. It's a calling to be a listener to other people's problems. And try to facilitate. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to think. I'm going to listen. And then if you ask me for suggestions or advice, I will speak to you from that deep spiritual place where I'm pretty certain it's not my ego talking. Okay? It's one of those things that I'd like to be able to provide as a service for free to those who need it. And to be able to do that on a full-time basis, I need investors. So if you think that that's an awesome thing and you appreciate the worldview that I bring to the conversation, then check out my Patreon page, which is currently going through a massive overhaul and remodeling. But check out patreon.com, look up Mr. Zeppo, and sign up to subscribe for $1 a month. Or if you don't like subscription things, inbox me directly on any of my social media and we'll arrange a one-time PayPal gift. I know I criticize gurus for profiting on their students, but let me be clear about why I feel comfortable soliciting donations. I don't claim to be a guru. I'm just another human being that's spent his entire life focusing on solving the riddle that we all face, the big mysteries of life. Why are we here? What are we supposed to do? What is the point? And because it's been my hobby and my passion and my love, I want to share the comprehension and the understanding that I've come to with others, because that comprehension, that understanding, that research, it saved my life. Okay, total sidebar and tangent. Let's get to today's subject. You may, dear friends, dear listeners, you may or may not be aware of the fact that there is a growing, simmering war on social media, a war of words and wits and supposed evidence between flat earth believers and globists, people who are certain that the world is a globe and people who are very attached to the belief that the world is flat. And I'm here to suggest an entirely different comprehension of what Earth is. Why? Because I'm tired of that argument. That argument is at least 4,000 years old, maybe older. And quite honestly, here's my main thesis. That argument is one of the tools in the arsenal of the oppressors, the corporate war profiteers, to keep humanity divided, arguing, fighting, and distracted from the truth, and distracted from the unity that we could be building to solve the problems that we face. So that's my primary thesis. And let me tell you something. Flat earthers hate it. And so do globists. And they all immediately jump down my throat and demand proof. Because everyone loves to claim that they can prove something. As always, my response is to say, whoa, wait a minute. Let's take a big, huge spiritual step back. Let's look at what's going on. First of all, to sort of, just back up my statement about it being a tactic of divide and conquer, let's just address the nature of the argument. All over social media, you can find several, flat earth argumentation groups and or clubs on Facebook and elsewhere. There is this debate going on. And if you just go to observe, don't engage, just go observe, you'll notice one big primary trend. And that's that both sides reference evidences that they have been exposed to, that when you look at it from a really detached perspective, if you just put yourself in the position of I don't agree with either, or I don't subscribe to either model, and you look at the evidences that they're throwing at each other, they don't really add up. There's all kinds of alternative facts and assertions and blanket statements and totalitarian declarations being thrown around by both parties. And almost always, the debate tends to devolve or, fall apart into hate-mongering. Oh, you globetard, you're a brainwashed idiot. Or, oh, you moronic flat earther, you're a brainwashed idiot. You know what it tells me when I see two groups arguing with each other, calling each other brainwashed idiots? Do you know what I then can only rationally and spiritually conclude? Both parties have been brainwashed. Think about that for a minute. Okay, so that I probably just offended everybody listening, because everybody listening probably falls into one of the two categories. But here's the critical issue that people don't want to look at. All argumentation is distraction. Yeah, all argumentation is distraction, because all argumentation ends up falling apart into this sort of just rhetorical hate-mongering, because it's an ego trap. Arguing is an ego trap. Okay, so then what is the solution? What is the opposite? Referencing back to the dichotomies episode, there's two fundamental dichotomies in the universe: ego trap and its opposite, which can be described as ascension, or in terms of argument, you could describe as collaboration. Let's get down to fundamental roots of our experiences here on Earth. Unless you are an astronaut and you've literally been in space, then you do not know for a fact that any of the evidences on either side of the argument are actually legit. You do not know for a fact what the world looks like from space if you have not physically been there. Therefore, because you cannot know directly through personal experience, you are choosing to believe in one of the two ideological constructs. What do I say about belief? What's the big lesson about belief in this universe that everyone's got blinders to because they're too busy believing? Belief manifests. And here's where we get to the really exciting part about how we can destroy this argument. Just put it to an end. Okay? Let's zoom back and talk about what the universe is on a couple of different levels. And I'm going to reference Einstein, who was a genius and a quantum mechanical physicist, who many people argue, he debunked his own theories, but most of those people who argue that have not read Einstein's work and comprehended it. I have. Not to brag. I'm not better than you just because I've read Einstein's work. I just bothered to put the time in. Einstein understood some deep, deep truths about the cosmos, about the entirety of reality, that to this day maintain as verifiable and true. Yes, he later then sort of retracted some details and rearranged his thesis and acknowledged that ultimately he didn't have the big picture answer. He didn't have the total, complete solution. That doesn't debunk the things that he clarified or identified as true. One of the most important critical statements that Einstein ever made is the following: the universe is an illusion, albeit an incredibly persistent one. Let's take a moment to look at that and think about that. The universe is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. I'm going to connect two dots that are rarely connected. And I'm going to assert to you that there is a simple and direct way to verify Einstein's statement. First of all, there's two ways. You can do the research, and Google doesn't count as research, folks. Typing in a phrase, which is usually biased in the direction of the issue that you are trying to argue for or against, it's going to render you results that are biased in the direction that you want. That's how internet searches work. If you Google flat earth is true, you're going to find a bunch of sites that indicate and validate that belief. So Google is not research. But let's step back. How can you test and or personally confirm Einstein's statement that the universe is an illusion? You can do real research. Go dig into books and dig into both sides of that potential statement, or the way, people who would argue in both directions. Throughout history, there has been a philosophy of materialism. If you really dig materialism, the thesis that the world is just the solid objects that exist, that we can touch, that we can handle, that we can break, and that's it. That theory or philosophy sounds pretty plausible until you dig deeper and deeper, and you realize that, lots of natural phenomena contradict that statement. On the other side, you research, physics and all of the different sciences. And yes, science sometimes is corrupt. But if you do the research and you dig deep, you find that there's a consistent statement from various scientists from different eras, as well as ancient mystics. Ancient mystic researchers agree that the universe is not a clockwork, solid construct object that never changes. So, let's take it that you've done the research and you can wrap your brain around the statement that the universe is an illusion. The universe is an illusion, and it is persistent because that is its job. The purpose of the illusion is to convince us in our little talking monkey flesh envelopes that we are here and we are alone and we are separate from the divine process that is generating the universe. The divine, I was going to say manufacturing, but that word is loaded and I chose right then not to use it. But the divine process that is growing the cosmos, there's an agenda there. And that agenda is bigger than anything we're dealing with in politics or religion or society. And that's a topic for a different episode. But that's important here and relevant to the discussion. Okay, so if the universe is an illusion and has persistence, and its job is to sort of seduce us into a place where it's very hard to pick between ascension and ego trap, then, and we connect that to the concept that belief manifests, then you can understand the following. People who believe that the world is a globe, if they go out and try to perceive that, they're going to perceive a globe. People who believe that the world is flat, they go out to verify that with their perception, and they're going to perceive flatness. All right, how can I prove that that is true? Using physics alone, any basic amount of research will establish the following things as true. A, the visible universe is only a tiny percentage of what's going on in the entirety of the actual universe. Okay? The visible spectrum of energy is a tiny fraction of all the energy. And that's important because we're arguing about perception. We are arguing, this debate about flat earth, round earth, is an argument about what shape an individual perceives. But our perceptions are ridiculously limited when we're operating in this third eye closed, talking monkey, ego mind modality. Our apparatus is beautiful and has many subtleties to it. As Shakespeare has a lovely passage about what an amazing feat man is, what an amazing device, what an amazing creature man is. Lots of people praise our human condition, but we must acknowledge that this apparatus, in its lowest common denominator, is filtering out the vast majority of what's actually going on. Okay? And that which we do perceive is relativistic, not to be confused with solipsistic, which is something that a lot of people are trying to throw back as a debunking argument towards any kind of mystic interpretation of the universe. And I'll address that in a minute, if I have time. If not, I'll make another episode about why the solipsism proves that mysticism is wrong argument is nonsense. But let's proceed. In physics, it is well established that light can be measured in two ways. Now, before we move forward, let me point something out to you. We often dismiss light as not matter. As in like matter is hard stuff. Incorrect assessment by, non-physicists. Light is a form of matter. It is the most ephemeral, the most ethereal, the most magical form of matter, and it is at the highest end of the visible spectrum. In fact, we could not see the rest of the material world. We would not be able to visibly perceive all other forms of matter if it was not for light. But what is the important thing I'm trying to point out here? It is a verifiable, scientifically testable, reliably confirmable phenomena that light exists in two modalities at once. Light is both a particle and a wave. And here's the part that connects what Einstein said with the part about belief. When you conduct an experiment to measure the unit of light, the assumption that the measurement makes, or the measurer, the scientist, or the observer makes in doing that measurement is what determines the outcome. In other words, if you're not thinking about light at all, you're hardly aware of it. And it is busy doing the magical, miraculous things that it does, being both a particle and a wave. The moment that you, as an individual, set up to do an experiment, your bias in the moment of doing the experiment is going to determine the results, just like when you search something in Google. If you go, I'm going to prove that light is a particle, guess what? Every time you measure light with your little measuring instruments, it's going to measure a particle. But conversely, the same scientist, the same observer can change his mind, change his or her ideological construct in their mind and say, I'm going to prove that light is a wave. Boom. Instantly, light is measured as a waveform instead of a particle. Well, my friends, let us remember, light is a form of matter. It's the fastest moving form of matter. It's the lightest, most ethereal form of matter. It's sort of like the speed limit of all matter, right? Of visible matter, of tangible matter. There's much more going on in the universe beyond light, because everything is energy. That's what E equals mc squared means. And trust me, no matter how much science has advanced since Einstein's day, no one has actually debunked E equals mc squared. Lots of interesting alternative theories have been proposed, but ultimately it comes back to going, oh, yeah, no, right. Energy is all that exists. Our perception of those energy forms then alter that energy or shape that energy in the process of it being perceived. Okay, if that is true of light, which is like the king of matter, then that is true of all matter. Now, of course, if you look at a physical object and you believe that it should change, it's not going to change right away, because the rest of matter is profoundly slower than light. Okay? That's why I can't stare at an empty box and believe that there's $1 million in it, and suddenly there'll be $1 million there. That's the fallacy of the false equivalency of the secret. You'll never be able to just do that. But your belief constructs in your mind will indeed facilitate in interpreting what you are perceiving. Some things will not change fast enough. Therefore, you cannot demand physical objects out of thin air. But other things will change very slowly through action and in participating with the universe. Now, one of the things that can change are intangible perceptions that you can't immediately directly experience. For example, flat Earth. If you choose to believe an ideological construct that defines the Earth as flat, then everywhere you look from then on, you will find what appears to be evidence for that. Building up that belief, reassuring that belief. It's called the echo chamber. We all know how it works in politics. The more you only listen to Republican talking heads, the more you only believe in Republican ideology. There's a converse process, though. Okay? It's not about winning. It's not about fighting over ideas and picking the winning idea. That'll get us nowhere, because ideas always fail to accurately represent the universe in its entirety. All right? The inverse, though, or the opposite of that, is an amazing process. If you abdicate ideology, if you stop trying to believe that the world is round or that the world is flat, you will then liberate your perceptive mind and your perception apparatuses to perceive Earth for what it really is. And this is where I get to the really, really radical part of my assertion, or of my attempt to debunk the argument. But it's usually right around here that people from both parties of the flat globe argument start going unhinged and start throwing hate speech at me. Why? Because they are all acting out the us versus them ideological brainwashing programming, where you and your beliefs are always correct, and anybody else's suggestions are going to be inherently wrong and evil, and so you refuse to listen to them. Now, some try to say that's what I'm doing, and I humbly suggest to you that I'm doing the opposite of that. I am not forcing anyone to believe in anything that I believe in because I don't believe in anything. I'm sharing with you, to the best of my ability, using language, which is very limited and always fails to describe things in its, fullness. I'm trying to describe to you what I have perceived. And this is the radical statement. Earth is not a place. I'll say it again, especially for anybody out there who's really open and trying to wrap their brains around the point here. Earth is not a place. It is not an object the way, a cup is an object. Just like you, as a human being, are not an inanimate object. You are a sentient, living being manifesting your reality. So is Mother Earth. She is a living, sentient being with her own agenda, much bigger, much more complicated, much more nuanced, much more intense than anything we're arguing about here on her, in her, within her. And in order to wrap your brain around that, I need you to consider the following fact. This is a scientific fact. In other words, it isn't just a thesis. It can be measured, and it can be measured again, and it can be measured again, and tested and verified. The human body, in terms of its cellular makeup, if you were to, anytime you take a human body apart and count all of the cells and compare and contrast the DNA inside those cells, you're going to get a total number of cells. And you're going to find out that 9 out of 10 out of all of those cells do not contain human DNA. That means that there's a lot of things that are alive that exist in you and on you and throughout you that are not you, that are themselves their own living being. And although it seems inconceivable that they would have sentience and awareness, they probably do, because that's what operates the universe: sentient awareness, consciousness. Plants have consciousness. Single cellular organisms have consciousness. We just don't comprehend it because we're trying to comprehend it through language. And at that level, they probably don't use the language that we use. Okay? In the human gut, there's millions of bacteria of different types, of different tribes, let's say, of different races, to borrow that term, which is just an ideological term. Whole other episode about how race doesn't exist is coming down the pipeline. But in the human gut, there's millions and millions. There's whole societies, whatever they may be doing, however their societal structures may be structured. There's living beings in your gut and on your skin and on your eyeballs. Now imagine that you could zoom in and listen in on their quote-unquote conversations. If we could translate the way those tiny little microbial consciousnesses might be communicating. Imagine, if you will, the two of them are having a raging argument. The lower intestine is a closed-circuit tube. If you travel far long enough in one direction of the lower intestine, you will come back to where you started, says one of them. The other says, no, that's impossible. There's no way that can be. The lower intestine has an opening and an exit, and we just don't understand what that opening and that exit is all about. You, being the person that contains the lower intestine, comprehend that those two arguments are inherently incorrect, don't you? Of course you do. Now, the one saying that the lower intestine has an opening, an entrance, and an exit might be technically closer to the truth, but that does not mean that it is self-righteously correct. It's just that person is just being self-righteous. That microbe is being self-righteous. And so is the loop intestine person or microbe. They're being self-righteous about their theory that it's a tube. And they will argue that forever and ever and ever. And you, as the person, the entity that contains them and holds them and sustains them and nourishes them, you wish, if you were to perceive this about them, you would long to communicate them, wouldn't you? You would long to be able to somehow reach them and tell them in a way that they understand to stop arguing. Just stop arguing, especially if that argumentation is going to keep them divided and distracted from their actual jobs in the lower intestine, right? You would want that. Well, guess what, my friends? That's exactly what Mother Nature wants. She is a living being. Okay? The place that we call Earth, which can simultaneously, just like Schrodinger's cat in the box, be perceived as either a flat plane with mysterious boundaries that we can't comprehend and a mysterious system of self-sustainment, or a globe, which also has many mysterious aspects to it that we cannot fully explain. She's more than either of those two models, because those two models are ideological constructs designed and invented by beings with a very severely limited perspective that cannot directly, in the way that they are doing it then with their sentences, with our ego minds and our language. When we operate in our ego mind and try to use language to describe the universe, we totally fail to perceive it accurately. Therefore, both of those models cannot be correct. Thus, arguing about them is totally meaningless. You see my point? Who cares if it's round or if it's flat? The argument is meaningless because we are only perceiving a tiny fraction of what it is in reality. And our perceptive systems will create an image in our mind that supports and sustains whatever biased, predetermined belief we start with to go and try to perceive her. In reality, she is a sophisticated, complex, larger than us living entity that gave birth to us. And this is why it is important to put an end to this ridiculous debate, because this debate, just like all other argumentation going on in the world, is keeping us distracted from the fact that some of us are abusing, poisoning, and destroying the womb that gave birth to us. And putting an end to that activity is so profoundly more important than being correct between these two very limited and totally flawed models. Does that make sense? If you were a flat earther before, I hope you will take the time to reconsider that position, because all you're doing is helping the corporate war profiteers, steal the blood of our mother from her, steal the bones of our mother from her body, and use them to sell you meaningless crap that you don't need. I don't like to label myself as anything supernatural or as, I don't claim to be clairvoyant. I don't claim to have supernatural powers. I'm a human being, just like you. Okay? Just like every flat earther, just like every globist. And as a human being, I have personally experienced the verification of the statements I am making. How? I can guide you towards the place where you are ready to have that experience, but I cannot prove to you that experience is real. You have to prove it to yourself. I'm going to do an episode down the road called You Can Lead a Horse to Water, but You Can't Make it Drink. And I'll explain that once you've led the horse to the water, you can definitely entice it to drink in one particular way. You certainly cannot force it to drink, just like I cannot force you to believe me. But I can certainly point to the process the internal process of self-liberation from the ideologies that blind you to the cosmic reality. If you are clinging to a belief system that says the world is an innate object here at our disposal to destroy and do with as we please, then you will not be able to communicate and commune with your mother, and instead you will be participating in her poisoning and in her destruction. Now, it's very unlikely that human beings can outright kill Mother Earth. But we sure as fuck seem to be letting ourselves make a really good hardcore effort at doing so, aren't we? And that is one of the moral imperatives of meditation, to abdicate those activities, to end those activities through the process of liberating our apparatus, our little talking monkey suit, so that the truth, the divine light of truth, can emanate from within ourselves to illuminate the external world so we can perceive it more accurately than we've allowed ourselves to perceive it at this time. All right? Having said all that about not being a clairvoyant or not being a medium, I can assure you that Mother Earth whispers in my heart of hearts. She speaks to me, not in language, not in words in English or in Spanish or in any other, limited symbolic system, but in pure divine inspiration. And that's not because I'm special or because I'm chosen in any way, but because I am her child, just like you are. So I'm not, again, she's invited me, she has inspired me, not to prove any of this to you, but to sort of seduce you along your own path until you realize that you can commune with her too. And if I having said all that, I was inspired by her to try and put this message into English words you can understand. Thus, I'm going to end this episode with the meme I made that represents pretty much the center of the message being sent by the entity that we call Mother Earth. Now, in the universe, there are many forms of beings. Mother Earth and Father Sun are one of them, but they are not the whole entirety of them. There are many others. Ultimately, those beings are also illusions, right? They are, in their own right, very real, but also very illusory. And ultimately, we are all just one unity that is experiencing ourselves from the perspective of one of those various different entities, so we can then experience ourselves in the other various forms and entities. Like I was saying with the crisis of consciousness episode, that's the problem between people. Children are born completely innocent and without hate and without malice towards others. But then we are indoctrinated away from perceiving each other as one. And then we fall for the ego trap of argumentation and fighting. Same with us and the metastructural beings in the universe. So, Mother Nature has this to say to us, her children. And you can call me crazy, but this is one of the hardest core things I've experienced in my life that I will not be shaken from. I know that the following is a true thing. If Mother Earth could just speak to us directly in English, like I was describing, like if you could just directly speak to the bacterial entities in your gut in English, she would say this. Hello, my children. I love you. I forgive you. But could you all stop fighting and arguing about bullshit and start meditating, please? Because that is your cosmic job in the universe as a species, to meditate. All the rest of the nonsense that you're all arguing and fighting and killing each other about is not important and not what your life here in this reality is really about. So could you all get your shit together, please? We've got bigger fish to fry and several other lessons to learn ahead, and all your silliness is seriously blocking your progress and the progress of all your brothers and sisters around you. Thanks. Namaste, Mother Earth. I don't want you to blindly accept that as reality. I want you to question it. I'm not claiming, I'm not demanding your belief, and I'm not claiming that I'm better than you just because I was inspired to create that, or I am inspired to bring this message to the world. I am inviting you humbly, but emphatically, to investigate it for yourself. And as many wise people before me have said, don't go looking out there in the external world for the evidence to this or the proof to this, because out there is the illusion, and out there is in fact jerry-rigged to confuse us. Why? Because we created the universe as we know it as a test, as an incubator, as a classroom where some challenges will arise, and we must figure out how to choose the spiral path of ascension through collaboration, through liberation of our ideologies, and through the lifting up of each other as brothers and sisters in one unity. So don't go looking out there for the evidence to this. Look within. If you don't know how to do that, I've got plenty of suggestions on how to start. If you don't want to follow my suggestions, there are plenty of people that came before me that have awesome suggestions of where to start. But ultimately, and this is really important for everyone to understand, ultimately, you're on your own. Ultimately, once you figure out to look inwards, and to look inwards through a process of abandoning belief constructs and ideologies and biases, you'll reach a point in that journey, in that path, inside of you, where no one else can help. Because it is you and your ego mind and all of your identity constructs that have to wrestle the way Jesus wrestled with his demons in the desert, the way Buddha wrestled with his demons under the Budai tree, the way Muhammad, they all did the same, okay? And that's a whole other episode. Jesus wasn't a Christian, Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, and Muhammad was not an Islamist. And we're going to make an episode about that soon, so stay tuned. Well, I'm really close to the end of my time, so again, thanks so much for listening. I hope it was interesting and fascinating, and I hope that it prompted you to consider your assumptions and question them. And also, I really hope that if you know a flat earther, you'll share this with them. And if you know a globist, that you'll share this with them. And most importantly, I hope that if you are either one of those things, that if you identify as either one of those isms, that you'll abandon those isms. Because they ain't doing you any good, my friend. Mother Nature sends her love and her thanks. I send you lots of love and energy. May peace, love, and grooviness be with you. Until next time, this is the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo saying goodbye and namaste. Please share if you agree. Please join me on social media. There's a lot of people clinging to a lot of crazy ideology. And it is our moral imperative, our calling on earth, to help liberate them with compassion, with love, with understanding. Peace out, folks.